Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. In a few days from now, this administration will be marking its second anniversary. And since the coming on board of this administration, there have been several reforms in the economy. And of course, the question to ask is, are these yielding results? How minute or how big are some of these results? We have, of course, a guest in the studio this morning, and together would again go through some of these reforms and how much of impact they've had on the economy, and perhaps also see if we could take a peep into the future and be, project into what Nigerians should expect in the next 2 years in the life of this administration. We have joining us in the studio MD, CEO, Capital Plus Management Limited, a financial advisor, Oluseyi Odufuwa. Thank you for joining us again on the program today.
Thank you for having me once again.
When you came into the studio this morning, it was your turn to question us. And you did say, are there changes in the economy? Yeah. And I said, well, maybe minute, maybe not as much as Nigerians would have expected. So you are the expert here. Okay. And so I know that the first thing is a lot of Nigerians are still very skeptical whether or not all of these reforms are working, especially when it comes to their purchasing power and the price of food in the market. So again, with the indices, with the, when you put paper to pen, an average Nigerian will still say, it doesn't look like things are working. But like we gave an analogy yesterday, it looks like there's some bit of quietness in town. It also could signify the fact that, okay, it looks like things are getting better, because if it was worse, they would have shouted. Yeah. So for you, how again are these reforms impacting on the lives of an average Nigerian?
Okay. Thank you for having me once again. We have projected so much over the last 1 year. And for every time we do our projections, it hits the target mark. I want to say again that the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as a financial analyst, as an economist, the administration has taken the bull by the horn. The administration has done the right thing. They've ticked the right boxes, even though some of these policies, if I were president or if I were very close to him to give him one or two advice, I would have done it in a little bit different way. I'm talking of some of these policies. Okay. But sincerely, most of his policies are beginning to take positive effect on the life of Nigerians and even abroad, our image too. So we cannot start to discuss these policies without looking at where we're coming from. This administration is barely 2 years, but before the 2 years of this administration, there was an administration. And you know that government is a continuum. And because it is, the last administration too must be put into perspective. You know, immediately President Tinubu came on board, he didn't wait for 6 months like the previous one to get his ministers on board. And so from day one, on May 29, 2023, you could see that that opening speech got him going immediately. And two major policies that he brought on board on day one that really caused the uproar and really disrupted the system, which is total removal of fuel subsidy and the floating of the naira. So those two major policies, Nigerians couldn't absorb together, which I felt also that it was a little bit hard on Nigerians. But come on, look at it from another perspective. What would another president have done better? Every aspirant at that time agreed that subsidy needed to go. But for me, I would have made it a staggered removal instead of total removal. But he took that decision. It was bold, and we had to live by it. He had to float the naira at that time too, because naira was not reflecting its true value, and that's the simple truth. Naira was around 473 naira or so to $1, where we know quite well that at that time naira was supposed to be run at about 1,600 or 1,700.
Because of the reality of
that's the true reality. So we were not getting foreign transactions in Nigeria. IMF, World Bank, Paris Club, and every other multinational were not trying to do business because immediately we had capital import, immediately it was zero. Because at the time where these FX needed to leave the country, there's no way it can balance. So everybody knew that something had to change, and that was what really happened. At that time too, he felt also that we shouldn't have different FX market. We should have a single window.
A parallel market.
Thank you. So which was the NAFEM. There's NAFEM, there's NAFEX. So we chose the NAFEM market and everything was harmonized.
Okay.
So, but the pain, we needed to go through that pain because of the plenty leakages that happened in the last administration. Let me tell you, as at May 29, 2023, 97% of our revenue was used for debt servicing. There's no way we can grow with 3%. There's no way we can even pay bills. And that's why they had to borrow and borrow and borrow. Look at COVID loan. That's the $3 billion that was borrowed by the Buhari administration. Tell us, how did it impact in our average life? Nothing. Nothing. What we knew that was that the humanitarian minister at that time shared so much in the northern part of the country. It didn't go anywhere. And this administration had just paid it back fully, about $3 billion, with just about $30 million to go in terms of interest because of the disparity in FX. Now, if you look at those major reforms, it had to happen at that time. Somebody had to pay for it, and who will pay for it? It's Nigerians. And so we had to suffer our way all through to get back to prosperity. And immediately those things were done, we had more naira to play with in the economy. And that was why immediately, if you look at one of his first policies, it was local government autonomy.
Right. Even though we're still having issues with, with the implementation of that judgment.
Well, in implementation, there's no two ways about it. It was a Supreme Court judgment.
Agreed.
And so, you know, the sanctions would begin to roll out. And it was very clear by the Attorney General of the Federation and the Accountant General of the Federation too that any state that does not comply, I think by May ending thereabout, if I'm sure, that there will be sanctions. They won't pay. They won't pay. So it was very clear that that is a precedent that wanted governors to get to the grassroots. And that's why it separated local government from the state government. And let's take a look at it. Ever since the removal of fuel subsidy, there is no state that has gotten less than 45 to 55% increase in terms of FAC allocation. Now, average allocation to 3 tiers of government was around about 500 billion naira monthly. Now they share about 1.7 trillion averagely. There's no local government in this country today, no matter how small, that gets less than 300 million every month. So he has transferred grassroots to local at the local level, and that's what he did first. Because I want to believe that he's a president that has that human face to see that everybody gets out of this debacle. And if you want to look further, electricity is a major concern, you know, because we can't have growth without electricity. 58% of GDP is from the MSMEs. And if MSMEs must thrive, there's no way. We have to have constant power, at least 15 hours minimum, so that people can get to work. It will reduce insecurity, it will create more effects, and it will stimulate growth because there will be more spending. And so, if you look at that too, he has decentralized electricity. So, 2024 Electricity Act, how many states
have started
looking at implementation to domesticate it in their states? That is once again taking the bull by the horn from the center. And we have so many more policies that he has rolled in that is working as we speak for the growth of the country. Look at the capital market, if you want me to, because we have about 11, 12 policies, economic policies that he has rolled out that is really working for him. Look at the capital market. ASI, that's the all-share index. 2023, they're about 74, 78,000. As we speak, it's about 109,000. In 2024, you know, market growth, that's the equity market growth, was about 38%. Okay. So it means that everybody in the world will want to come and invest in our market. Okay. And that is a system where in 2023, it was less than 20% in terms of growth, about 38%. It means that you put 1 million in the market, you have a good stockbroking firm who will manage it well for you. You should clean out about 35, 36%.
Right. Okay.
You understand? So the market too has seen significant growth. During the time of this president, last year alone, 2024, about 8 to 10 banks raised about 2.2 trillion in the market because of recapitalization. It happened in this market. So there's also market confidence during the time of Mr. President. So if you look at it, there are still so many. Look at the tax reform bill.
Yes, I'm sure that Jibola will come
time,
into...
I could go on and on and on.
All right. We understood everything that you have said, the analysis that you just gave us now. Yes. But to an average Nigerian who is watching us right now, whose purchasing power is limited, is finding it difficult to feed. So how do you outline all those reforms in such a way that they will know that at the end of this dark tunnel, there's going to be light?
Okay, sir. Thank you. I want us to continue to have that belief, and that's why you have some of us who believes well in this country, who will not denigrate anything about the country, and still see how we can forge ahead, because our people need hope. They need those kind of words that will encourage them to get out of this tunnel. But we must first of all grow on paper before we grow on real terms. And that's the simple truth. We must grow on paper first, because those analyses, we need to always have those kind of conversations. What is IMF saying? IMF agrees that we are growing. World Bank agrees that we are growing. They projected about 2.7% growth, GDP growth. In 2024, we grew by 3.8%. As we speak, if not for the tariff war that is on globally as we speak, that is reducing oil price, as we speak, we should be growing at about 4%. But currently, we are projecting about 3.6 for 2025, which is a little bit of reduction. But averagely, even China is just growing about 4%, and their projection is almost 5%. The US is also losing on growth, UK economy too. So it's all global. But for the Nigerian citizens, I just want to say that the economy is in the right direction. Everything Mr. President is doing at the moment is on the right direction. And the last time I came here, I made it very clear that before we begin to see proper growth, before we begin to see the impact in the lives of an average citizen, it could be the end, towards the end of 2025 to 2026. Okay. By that time, you know, all the policies will begin to come into fusion, because most of these policies are fiscal policies. Okay. They are not monetary policies. And because they are fiscal policies, it takes a little bit of time before it begins to harmonize. Look at oil production, for instance. At 1.3 million barrels averagely for 2023, 2024, 1.5. Insecurity is being tackled at the right places. Presently, we are producing an average of 1.75 million barrels per day, even though our projection is about 2.01 million barrels per day. And so it means that there's more FX coming. At the time of the beginning of this administration, we had about just $3 billion in foreign reserve. As we speak, we have over 40 billion in reserve. And we need all these cushions to be able to have that international confidence, to bring more into the system. Right. And that's the right way to go. And that's why I said that we need to grow on paper. We need to have those cushions before it begins to reflect positively in the lives of Nigeria. What do we want as Nigerians? We want food. Food.
Basic.
I know. That's what I wanted to go to.
Basic.
Everybody wants food on their table. They want, you know, minimal security. And like you said,
of life.
Yes, they want their purchasing. Electricity is getting better. It's getting better at about 7,000 to 8,000 megawatts.
Depending on where you stay.
Exactly, depending on where you stay. And then if you also
I'm on band C. I know the two of you are on band A. I know.
If you also have enough money to continue to keep you, especially depending on the band that you are. So go ahead, please.
Okay, so if you look at it too, I was talking about what people
Nigerians,
need.
yes.
So food, look at food security as we speak. So much, over 20, about I think about $3 or $4 billion went into seedlings.
Seed purchasing.
Yes,
yeah.
went into mechanized, I think irrigation, last year. And for this year, we are in the rainy season already. It will take time.
Right, because planting will cease for
and
now.
don't forget that in 2024, the president encouraged, imports. And they opened the gates.
Borders,
and that was why we could say that, food prices came down, by about 15 to 18%. And before the end of this year, you will see more impact in terms of food supply around the country. It will be better.
It will be better. I like the fact that you're always very optimistic when you come on set. And I guess it is because you have an idea of what, the paper says, and then, of course, how it will translate to the overall economy in years to come or in months to come. I know that earlier you did mention the fact that Nigeria should, offset her debt to the IMF at least by mid-2025.
Yes.
But there's still a worry on the amount of public debt that Nigeria is owing. And so, yes, we are gradually easing off our debts from the IMF, but the issues surrounding public debt is still very big. And instead of our debt to be reducing, as of March, there's an increase. And so, can you break it down? What we mean by soon we should be out of the list of those owing the IMF, but in public debt we still have a great issue. Okay, so our debt profile is increasing as we speak presently. Our debt profile is a little bit over 140 trillion, which is super high. As we speak, for 2025, Nigeria is going to spend about 16 trillion to servicing the debt. Good. So that will take about 45% of total revenue, which is a little bit better than what we had in 2023, 98%. 2024, the president reduced to 68%. For this year, it will be 45%. 16 trillion to service debt, out of our 45% of total revenue. So it's a right in the right direction. In the right direction. Even though, thank you for that. So, even though the money is high, but the percentage of what we'll be paying back is still manageable. So there's nothing wrong if we borrow money. Okay. The problem, because there are benchmarks to some of these borrowings. IMF, World Bank, they all have their benchmarks. Debt to GDP, IMF says about 60%. World Bank ECOWAS is saying about 70%. World Bank about 65%. And the DMO, that's the Debt Management Office. They are saying about 40% threshold. So those kind of guides tell you where we are. Presently, Nigeria is on about 55%. So we are still within the threshold. It's not to borrow that is the problem. It's how you spend what you're borrowing. Money. Are we spending on recurrent expenditure? Are we spending on capital expenditure? Are they preferring this fund? Those are the questions. And that is where the conversation should be. So the borrowing is not the problem. So but in the past, we all know that, so many of these funds have gone. I was just asking a question. The $3 billion alone for COVID relief, intervention, special intervention, where did it go to? And look at, it takes taxpayers' money to return those funds. So $3 billion that could have been used for healthcare, health centers, maybe about 20, maybe about 30 around the country. $3 billion that could have solved about 4 or 5 states' public water system. $3 billion that could have been used, for transport subsidy, has gone down the drain without, accountability of how these funds were used. But this is a government that is moving forward. And so we are transiting from subsidy issues to debt issues. And that's the simple truth. And that's why the conversation you just raised is very germane. Yes, it's very germane. So
Okay, finish
I just wanted to finish my line of thought. So, in terms of this debt issue, if Nigeria is not careful, if we continue to borrow and borrow and borrow without thinking inwards, we'll begin to have debt crisis. Because we are coming down from revenue to debt servicing. It won't be too nice for us to go back to that trajectory. Look at now, our benchmark for oil price is $75.
Right.
As we speak, it's coming down to almost $60, at $63 presently. So how do we fund the budget?
Right.
It's a big challenge. So are we going to fund the budget by more borrowings? Are we going to fund the budget by cutting costs? Are we going to fund the budget by increasing tax?
Right.
It is either of these three. So, like you raised, and very vital, Nigeria at this present moment must quickly look into our debt crisis so that it will not balloon out of proportion, because it's already high. Yes, 16 trillion to service. By next year, it could be more. So, for me, I will advise government at this time to look inwards by cutting down on costs, which is very, very important. Let's reduce borrowings and focus more on tax generation so that we can fund the budget, because already we have a budget deficit because of the oil price that we have.
All right. The fact that we are intentional about servicing our debt, how does that affect our image in terms of foreign direct investment and, of course, encourage portfolio investment inflow into the country? Okay,
so that's a beautiful one too. It shows that this is a president that wants to affect every part of our lives. And I said it while we started this conversation, that our image abroad really matters. You know, if we want to bring in capital inflows and foreign direct investment, the image is very key. Now the world knows that we are a country who they should respect. We are a country that keeps to terms in terms of agreement. And you know, we are still going to borrow more. We know that. But in as much as we have a system that is clearing our backlog and is intentional with what they might want to take for direct projects, I think we're on the right footing. And our image all over is getting better. And I know that as journalists too, you also attest to the fact that our image abroad
it's also getting better.
It's getting better.
All right. So
it's getting better.
Yes. Only yesterday did the CBN also retain the MPR at 27.5%. And I know that the last time you came here, we spoke about this and the fact that, again, this could also be a minus for the MSMEs. And so one would have thought that, the meeting would have, again, perhaps looked at how they could maybe have a decline in that rate, but now there's just a cap as we speak. So how much of impact will this have on MSMEs? Because we do know that they are the driving forces of the Nigerian market.
It's a beautiful one, but it's not decline, reduction.
Reduction, okay.
It's reduction. So we must use the right economic terms. Okay, so MPC meeting held, and they retained all parameters. And we had already predicted that it will happen that way. And I think that is the right thing to do.
Okay.
We all knew that they could not increase MPR anymore. If they do it, it will kill the remaining MSMEs, or probably that's the production sector. It will kill it entirely because access to funds is very key. At 27.5 is still very high. It gives room for hot money. That's capital inflows. You know, they invest it, buy bonds, 21%, 22%. It's beautiful. You know, any foreign investor that you bring in $10 million, $100 million, and you get 22% in 1 year. It's beautiful. Just take it. You don't need to do anything abroad. In a system like in the UK, where averagely they make between 5 to 6%. That's the cap you can make. And you have a Nigerian system where you could bring in funds, FX, and you make 22%. It's super high. And so it gives room for hot money, funds that will come in and leave almost immediately. And so it's not good for a system that is growing, a system that is trying to stabilize. And that's why we had to make our own clarion call to the CBN governor at that time that they couldn't increase rates any further.
Okay.
But we could also understand from his own perspective that he had to do it just to fight inflation.
Okay.
It was key at that time. And so maintaining rates at this time shows that there's stability. And that's the same thing IMF is saying, World Bank, in their latest ranking in terms of rating, And we have been rated as stable as we speak. And so the next rating will be AB+, BB+, and the likes. And so look at other parameters on that corridor. Our cash reserve ratio is still retained at 50%. For me, that is still too high. It does not enable banks to do good business. Okay. There's no liquidity anywhere. When 50% of investors' fund is warehoused with CBN, and they cannot use it, it's practically the highest in the world. Yes.
Is CBN aware?
They are aware. They are aware. They are aware. CBN is aware. But CBN is doing it just to manage Naira.
The Naira.
That's what they are trying to do. But is it encouraging banks to do business? It's a capital no. Average lending rate in any bank now, all in all, is not less than about 38%. So there's no SME that can walk into a bank now and take maybe 100 million Naira for a small business and survive. It's not possible.
Paying back
and there's no moratorium anywhere. Even if you get maximum of 3 months, and you'll be paying about 35, 38 million at the end of every year. There's no survival. It's death on arrival. So we call upon CBN to look at the CRR and see how it can come down further, and that will help banks to be able to lend more to the real sector. So other parameters too were maintained. Asymmetric corridor plus 500 minus 100, liquidity ratio at 30%. But we expect CBN to look at the cash reserve ratio, which should try to come down further. And I can assure you that by the next MPC meeting, I want to assure you that rate will come down.
Okay.
And I'm already predicting a minimum of about 20 to 30%, 20 to 30 basis points, minimum.
Okay.
You know, all these economic reforms, like you rightly mentioned, they are very good, and of course, it's going to take time for us to begin to feel the impact. When you look at this administration, there is no doubt about it that we're on the right track. But
I'm happy you said so.
From your narration this morning, as a layman.
You said there's no doubt.
So is it investing enough in infrastructure to complement some of these economic reforms?
Oh, beautiful. If you look at it, I might not have all the figures for our infrastructural investment as we speak, but we know that this present administration is investing heavily in infrastructure. Especially road infrastructure. We know that very well. And if you have good access to one another state-wise, it helps a lot. But one thing we should also realize is that Mr. President, what he's doing more is to empower states. That's what he's doing more, is to empower states so that growth, real growth, can start from your locality. And that's where the conversation should shift to at the end of the day. Probably when you bring Mr. Governor, he should be able to express what they are getting and what they were getting before, what they are getting presently, and how well it's being judiciously used for the Nigerian masses. Look at it, like I said, averagely, each state is getting about 50% more as we speak. Is there anything different in our normal day life? Public infrastructure. Is there growth? Can we see it? But what Mr. President has done is to increase it, let it go to states. He even separated it from local government. Go to your local government. Abroad, it is your municipal council that you go to. Even artisans, you call them from the municipal council, they come, they get it done. You won't even see anybody from the federal side. Everything is your local council, not even state. So, but here, everything goes to the federal government. And he has done the enabling laws for states to thrive. The funds are there for states to thrive. But how well are they using it? So in terms of infrastructure, federal infrastructure, we can see that he's doing more, especially on road construction. we can see that some of our dead industries are being revived. I was in a meeting with Minister for Trade and Investment. So many things were reeled out, so many things that are happening that they are not really publicizing as we speak. And we believe strongly that before the end of the year, when they are taking stock, we'll begin to see some of these reforms. And by then, the administration will have transited to over 2 years, and so people can begin to judge accurately.
Let's quickly look at the inflation rate, because that is, again, another driving force of every economy. According to statistics, the inflation rate, of course, in March, of course, was about 24.3%.
It has reduced.
Yes, and of course, so there's a slight reduction, of course, in April. But again, if you look at in February, of course, it was higher. And so if you look at the fluctuation that we keep having in inflation rate, even though the projection of Mr. President is to have 15% inflation rate, even though that's a very tall order. But for you, how the inflation keeps fluctuating month in, month out, is that also a positive for the economy?
Beautiful. That's part of what I wanted to share, that in the last 2 months, we have had a decline in inflationary trends. Most usually our headline inflation and food inflation, presently at about 23.7%. So before at about 24. But let's start from where we're coming from, because I always like to transit from a point to another in economics. And so inflation was at about 38% before. We should remember that.
True.
So at about 38%, then food inflation was holding about 40% of it. So because there was scarcity of food, high prices of food, inflation was rising. And now that food inflation has reduced to about, I think about 21.26%, thereabout, inflationary trends has reduced. Also, don't forget that Nigeria rebased this year in the first quarter. And because we have also rebased, you know, the parameters have changed. And it shows our true reality, because there's a base year for rebasing, and the Nigerian economy chose 2019. And so it reflects our recent position. So food inflation is a trend and an indication that the economy too is working. And I believe strongly that at the end of this year, IMF projection about 20%. So, but for me, I think we could close the year with about 19% in terms of inflationary trends, which is a significant milestone for the present administration.
Okay, the fact that the prices of crude is dropping as against what we predicated the 2025 budget on, how do we navigate this path for the 2025 budget to be effective?
It's a beautiful one, and that's part of the conversation that we should be having. And it's a big headache, I'm sure, for the Minister of Finance and the coordinating minister, and also the CBN governor, because benchmark at 75, which was also a tall order, because as analysts, we already knew that a Trump administration would disrupt the system. We said it in different forums. And so if you are projecting, we should have projected lower, at least to about $70 per barrel. And when we saw 75, wow, even growth, GDP growth, we saw 4.6%, which was high. You know, even though we feel that we should be growing presently at about 7 to 8%, so that we can meet our $1 trillion economy growth by 2030.
Right.
I want to say that there's a gap as we speak. I'm talking of revenue gap, because $75 per barrel, revenue of about 38 to 39 trillion. How do we cover for those kind of gap?
Right.
The only way, like I said earlier, is to look inwards. 3 things. We can either borrow more to fund it. We can also try to generate more by taxing Nigerians.
You can't tax Nigerians to death.
No, it's the truth. It's the truth.
You can't tax Nigerians to death.
Can the Buy Nigeria initiative change the narrative?
Well, it can, but it might not be too significant, because the budget is just being expended as we speak. And we are almost at the half of the year. So it's a little bit difficult. So budget performance might not even hit 60% at the end of the year. So, but it's an initiative that will, you know, be there year in, year out, and it will continue to grow over the years. But in terms of funding this budget, there's no doubt. At this oil price, there's already a deficit. So it is either Nigerians pay for it, it is either we cut costs very, very sharply, or we borrow. Those are the truths.
Right.
Anything apart from that, there will be problem.
There will be problems.
Yes.
All right, before we wrap up this conversation today, I know you mentioned this earlier, but let's quickly also talk about it. You talked about foreign investment.
Yes.
And with the way Jumoke Oduwole is actually going about her business on the international community, it looks like you know, a lot of more foreign direct investment may begin to come into Nigeria. Security is also very key. So when you look at the security of lives and property and then the security of your economy, what do you think government needs to do to step up you know, areas around securing Nigeria and securing the investment portfolio of the country? Okay,
so there are two different things: security as one, and then foreign direct investment for the country. So let's take security. Security is the bedrock. Everything is tied to security. Oil production, that's the mainstay. 98% revenue, oil. And so, if that be the case, and you know, most of this oil from the Niger Delta, it means that if we have good security, they can pump more. And if they pump more, it means that we'll have more effects. If we have more effects, it means that it will stimulate growth. If growth is stimulated, it will increase GDP. So, everything is interwoven. So, security at that level is super key. Without security, it's because of the relative security and peace that we have in that region. That is why presently we are pumping about 1.75 million barrels per day. There was even, I think about 2 months ago, we pumped about 1.9. We pumped about 1.9. So, but averagely at about 1.7 because of the issues we have with our Port Harcourt refinery once again. You know, so it's 1.7 million barrels. So if we have more, if we have adequate security, will pump more. It's also tied to agriculture. About 16.8% of GDP is from agri sector. So if we have adequate security in terms of food security, there's no way agri sector will grow more. It means that we can feed ourselves. And once we feed ourselves, then we can now talk of exports. And if we begin to export optimally, there's no way. For that sector, it should contribute about 25% to GDP at the end of the day. So security is tied to all. I spoke somewhere about nightlife too. If there's security, we should have our nightlife economy. In Nigeria, it's about just 0.5%. In the UK, life night economy grows GDP by 6%. In the US, it grows by 8%. So
we need to go now. I understand we have live feeds from the live broadcast that Mr. Deputy Governor, of course, is standing in for Mr. Governor. So we need to go now. Thank you so much, Olushe Yodufua, for finding time to be with us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll quickly take a short break and we'll be right back to wrap up the program.